Hey, what's up? Can you take care of it later, or do you have to deal with it on the spot? This is the thing that kind of amazes me is that people don't consider is like, do I need to do it here, or can I do it in the computer? And man, there's like that much talk about that, and there needs to be like that much talk about that. So what can you do so far as noise and other issues and things you don't really need to worry about? As I mentioned before, like when it comes to lenses, you should never pick a lens um, based upon silly ass factors that you can either remove in post or add in post. Like people buy art lenses that like it looks so dreamy. It's like you know that you can use a masking tool in Lightroom and make that goofy kind of cloudy, fuzzy, ethereal look in Lightroom, and that you should not be buying like that junky Sigma lens because it's got that look, because you can add that in Lightroom. There's some things you can't add in Lightroom, and that's why you want to be picking good lenses. Stuff like, depth, color saturation, micro contrast. You can actually do things that kind of look like micro contrast, but they're not. But you can't add in Photoshop what the hell isn't there in the digital negative, i.e. the raw file to begin with. I mean, there's no Photoshop or Lightroom plugin that is going to magically deduce what the hell is not there in the raws. Like, I think there's something there, I'm going to make it appear. Shazam! You know, Photoshop and Lightroom, people think it's magical, and it is kind of to a degree, but what ain't there to begin with can't be added in post-production. What isn't there to begin with can't be added. Oh, that makes sense. You can remove noise, I mean a lot of noise, much more than the SNR firmware and the camera itself can. Oh, okay, so you can remove underexposure. You have to know what the dynamic range or latitude of your camera is. I mentioned in a prior video you can, expose for the highlights up here and then apply, some adaptive ISO post-processing in the shadows down here to get an HDR-like image. It's not HDR photography, but it's essentially the same thing, is that you've got way too much, you got set exposure here and down here, you got a difference of, say, 6 stops. And if you expose for here, you're going to blow out your highlights. If you expose for here, everything on here is going to be underexposed. Even if you reach the max of the exposure for the stained glass window and go 2 stops over the metering of the light coming through the stained glass, everything still down here is going to be 3 or 4 stops or 5 stops under. No big deal. No big deal. So you can remove that underexposure to a degree. Depends on whether you have an ISO invariant sensor on your camera or not, and this is why Canon sucks. You can remove chromatic aberration. The very best and most expensive Zeiss lenses have a significant high contrast chromatic aberration. No big deal. You can remove it. Those lenses are color rich, great micro contrast, incredibly sharp, high resolution obviously. So what can't you remove? You can't remove flat rendering, crappy lens. Can't remove the flat rendering. You can't remove blown highlights. Bam! You clipped it. It's gone. You nuclear blasted the highlights. Dope! Zone system, expose for the highlights, open up an additional stop to 2 stops depending on the scene, and don't blast your highlights. So the other way around that is expose for the highlights, and then bring everything up in post. Obviously that takes some time, sitting there with a mouse and actually raising up the shadows, and of course you can't chimp on the image on the back of your camera. It's like, well, that looks great, but everything down here is black. Well, you can fix it in post. Yeah, but people generally don't want to. But if there's no other choice, then you do it. If that's the only way you can get the shot without blasting the highlights, then you do it. So obviously you can't remove a blur, unsharp, out of focus images. Oh, that's a serious issue. Well, think about the different types of noise and how you can keep them at a minimum. Noise, the lack of native gain, enough aperture, enough intensity, enough shutter. Noise is electromagnetic interference. For your camera, you can't really do much for that, but I mean it's a type of noise, and that's the reason why Sony mirrorless A7 series have bad noise, even though it's an incredibly high megapixel camera. I mean, you go out on a hot day, you got hot pixels and you got shadow noise grain out the ass. It applies to any DSLR. Sony's the worst, of course. Underexposure noise. Well, we know what the hell that is. Noise from bad 80 converter and SNR firmware. And you can take care of that with like Topaz denoising, or the other denoising application that I got that I can't think of at the top of my hand. It's a denoise professional application, which is really good. You can take care of that on your computer, which is better than any SNR firmware and any DSLR camera. Noise from enlargement due to noise floor. You crank the ISO way the hell up for whatever reason, usually because you didn't need to, and then you've got a noise floor which sits too close to your signal. Instead of actually giving your shot enough illumination so your signal's up here and your noise is down here, you thought you'd crank the ISO up, and then you brought your signal in relationship to the noise floor from this to this, and that ain't good. And what that does, oh damn, is that when you especially in the lower megapixel camera, when you want to crop it and bring it up, or you want to enlarge it in general, when you got a noise floor here and a signal of here, then all of a sudden all the noise comes wah, even after using denoising software to denoise the digital negative, the raw file in post. You still got an issue, because I said the best software in the world can't make appear what the hell isn't present in the raw. And information is information. And Photoshop and Lightroom are not magical programs where they go Shazam. It can take stuff that isn't there and make it appear. Yeah, you can raise it up and people think, well, that's kind of magical. When I chimped on the back of my camera, it looked black. Look as black as a well digger's butthole. Now it's properly exposed, but that's kind of magical. But if it ain't there and you lost it, applications to go Shazam, they don't make it appear. And when you start thinking about ISO, as opposed to shifting your thinking to illumination, proper exposure, this is why when you're in the studio and you got tons of lighting, you ain't worried about ISO one damn bit. You are worried about it that much. You stick it down there on the base or native ISO of ISO 200 on the Fuji or whatever the hell you want, and then you raise your illumination up. You're the master of the light. This is also the reason why professionals use speed lights in broad daylight. Yeah. That way you can actually expose for your background or the sky or whatever it is and raise your subject. That's all you have to do. This is why professionals pack speed lights in the bright daylight, because they can expose for their sky, whatever they want, and they raise their subject with a speed light. Because here's a fact. Okay, here's a big secret of photography. Secret of professional photography is giving the middle finger to Mother Nature and going, screw you, 90% of the time your lighting is not good. Professional photography is about giving the middle finger to Mother Nature. Now, some people actually specialize in natural light. They never pack around, they're purists. I never use artificial. Well, screw them. Everybody else that's getting more shots, more good shots more often, they're packing around speed lights in broad daylight. Because that way they can expose to the background and raise for their subject. You can drop it all into the dirt. It's like, I want to black, it's like 12 noon and the sun is blasting down. Wah! And then you're like, I want my picture to look this way. This person is standing behind some crap. I want to just illuminate them. Okay, well, how do I do that? Well, if you ain't got no speed light, you can't do jack crap. It's like, well, I'm going to drop everything into the dirt. Everything. Or mostly into the dirt. Whip out your speed light. Boom. The background is black, even though it's like 12 noon and the sun is going boom. You expose for your subject. You raise your subject up to what you want. Secret of professional photography is giving the middle finger to Mother Nature. Going, screw you. I want to expose it this way. I want the composition to look this way. Oh my God! Because this is why most people's shots look like snapshots from a point and shoot camera. It's like click, click. It's like, great, you got that $3,000 DSLR. I'm taking the same shots with this $80 phony point and shoot. Click, click, click. Make Mother Nature your bitch. Because that's what she is. She's a bitch. Mother Nature is a bitch. This is the main reason when you carry a speed light in the daylight. Because there's a lot of times where I want to lose the background and I just want to raise my subject up. Oh my God, it makes so much sense. Otherwise, if you expose for your subject, no matter how you tweak that shutter speed and aperture, you got issues with the background. Because Mother Nature is not your bitch until you pack around. Lighting, wah, lighting, lighting. Kind of makes sense, right? Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I found a bunch of 4x5 black and white stuff down in the basement that I shot ages ago. I was kind of moving stuff down there around there. I shot that with my Calumet 4x5. Memories. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll catch you later. Bye.